Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's agenda session for Tuesday, January 28, 2020. Okay, we have had a motion and it has been duly seconded. Any questions? All in favor by the sign of aye. Opposes nay. Motion carries. Now we'll go into ordinances on final reading, which has already been read into record. Item B and C. So now we'll move on to first readings. Madam Clerk, let's start with item 6A, please.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 38, zoning ordinance so as to rezone property located at 2163 West Shepherd Road, more particularly described herein from R2 residential zone to RTZ residential townhouse 0 lot line zone, subject to certain conditions.
Okay, items B and C has already been read into the record, transportation items. So now we will move into resolutions. Madam Clerk, please start with 7A, please.
A resolution by the City Council of the City of Chattanooga, Tennessee, requesting the members of the Tennessee General Assembly support legislation amending Tennessee Code annotated Title 45, Chapter 15, relative to the Tennessee Title Pledge Act.
Seeing no lights, let's move on to B.
A resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute the Seventh Amendment to Independent Contractor Agreement for professional services with Bright Bridge, Inc., related to the Environmental Protection Agency revolving loan fund grant for an additional term commencing August 1st, 2016 and ending September 30, 2020 for their administrative services, and to authorize the mayor or his designee to execute documents related to the EPA revolving loan fund.
Let's move on to C.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract for sale and purchase with Athens Distributing Company in substantially the form attached for the property located at 2754 Canacita Drive, tax map number 110BB001.17, in the amount of $455,000 for the construction of an equalization storage facility, a consent decree project, and to execute all documents related to the transaction with closing fees for an amount not to exceed $4,000 for a total amount not to exceed $459,000.
Item D.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Economic and Community Development to apply and, if awarded, accept a Fair Housing Initiative Program, Education and Outreach Initiative Grant for outreach and education materials and activities related to fair housing for an amount not to exceed $125,000.
Item letter E.
A resolution authorizing the City Finance Department to renew the contract with Nationwide Recovery Services for collection agency services for the second of 2 optional 1-year renewals.
Councilwoman Coonrod.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Donna. Can you tell me a little, I know you already have this initiative, this program already.
We do
being
not.
done?
No, this is a new grant program that HUD just announced.
Okay, so you no longer are doing fair housing under multicultural affairs or anything like that?
We are, the City of Chattanooga, and any recipient of HUD funds is required to produce a plan for fair housing. So yeah, we do that and have been doing that for years.
Okay, so
Not under the Office of Multicultural Affairs, but under Economic and Community Development, specifically community development.
okay, because I know they used to have, like, with the fair housing, where they sent people out to go check to make sure that they, opportunities for housing, or if there were any complaints, they were able to turn people down for specific reasons and so on and so we no longer do that anymore.
That program was managed and operated by the Office of Multicultural Affairs. They stopped doing that, I think, in 2016. We being Economic and Community Development, requested that all operations related to fair housing be exclusively under ECD for a variety of reasons. But primarily because our fair housing plan and the execution of that fair housing plan, all activities related to it, have to be approved by HUD. And if they aren't approved by HUD, then all the federal funds that we receive from HUD are at risk. So right now, we are in the middle of what a HUD-required plan called the analysis of impediments, which is a report that we will put together and submit to HUD to let them know what we as a city are going to be doing to take care of notifying people so that they will know what a violation of fair housing looks like and then what the remedy is for that. So previously, some of that responsibility was in the Office of Multicultural Affairs because the previous administration had put it there, but we feel strongly, as does Mayor Burke, that all of fair housing needs to be under ECD.
Okay, so once you all do the analysis of impediments, will we be getting presented with it, what it looks like?
Yeah, well, I think the date is, it's on the agenda already, yes.
Okay.
So the analysis of impediment to fair housing is a component of the consolidated plan, and I can't remember the date, but it's already scheduled to come before you, because it has to be approved by this body before we can submit it to HUD for consideration.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Good, Councilwoman? Okay. Madam Clerk, have E been read into record? Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Now we'll move on to items in Public Works, which has already been read into the records. Item F, G, H, I, J, K, L, and M has already been taken care of. That concludes this portion of our afternoon session. We will now move on to departmental reports from our Chattanooga Police Department. Chief, welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you all. Good afternoon, Council.
Sure.
Here it is. So again, it's my pleasure to come to you today, and we'll do the department report for everything your department has done in the last few months in the same format that we've used previously, just going through each one of the pillars. With the first one being community policing or problem-solving policing. And each one of those topics we'll touch on and expand, with the first one being a recent class that we brought in through our Homeland Security, Sergeant O'Brien, is the civilian response to active shooter events. Sergeant O'Brien taught this class, partnered with Erlanger to bring in another growing component towards addressing active violence in the community, which is a Stop the Bleed program. It teaches individuals that in the event that something does happen, how to properly use a tourniquet, how to apply direct pressure, what are some equipment purchases or protocols or trainings that can occur in both private and public sector businesses or entities to be ready in the event the tragedy occurs. So the civilian response to active shooter events teaches how to prepare, what protocols or plans to put in place, and then the event that it does happen and those plans are triggered, then you have something to use within your agencies to help save lives in the event someone has been harmed. This first one that we did, we had close to 100 people in attendance. It was very well received, and we're going to plan to do at least one of those every quarter, if not more. Also, we continued our support for the Special Olympics. We participated in what was called the Office Olympics, where 10 teams from different businesses around Chattanooga and different groups outfitted an office chair and then proceeded to get into a race with them. And Chattanooga's Fleet Division was kind enough to outfit ours with blue strobe lights and nitrous oxide. So we won, handedly, of course. But it was a great day for everybody. Got some money raised to support Special Olympics in our area as well, and everybody just had a great time with it. We also held a Tip-A-Cop event at Chili's in Hickson with participating officers from CPD and East Ridge, and we raised over $2,200. And then on February 8th, we will be doing again the Polar Plunge, where myself and as many officers that I can guilt or shame into going with me. That's you in the back, except for Dana, because she'll never do it. She'll quit first. But we jump in for the Polar Plunge and raise money. It's just a great morning to get to engage with those kids and athletes and other people in Chattanooga that are supporting Special Olympics. We participated in the Santa Train, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with that program through the Forgotten Child Fund. Went out on Christmas Eve, delivered presents to a total of 10 families. around the Chattanooga area. This has been a 54-year tradition spearheaded by the Forgotten Child Fund, and we look forward to this every Christmas Eve with supporting agencies from the Fire Department, Chattanooga Police Department, Tri-Community, other police departments across the entire area participate in too. It's just a fantastic night. So we look forward to that every single year, and again, participated this last Christmas. And then what we're looking to bring forward on February 29th is a collaborative event between us and the Chattanooga Fire Department, where we received a good number of gun locks for free, and we will be doing a front porch lineup at a fire hall in each one of the sectors in Chattanooga, our patrol sectors. And at that fire hall, we will bring out, canine, SWAT, traffic division with motors, things like that, some community event notifications, some of our own materials about the Chattanooga Police Department. But we will be handing out free gun locks to everyone that wants them in an effort to help people understand the importance of securing firearms in the home. And then also the Chattanooga Fire Department will be giving out vouchers for installation of smoke alarms in your home as well. So we're trying to get the message out and the equipment out as well. And that's on February 29th at 3 o'clock at each one of the fire halls. And we'll get more information out closer to February 29th.
Chief?
Yes, sir.
1 second, we have a question, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Can you, Chief, can you give us which locations you're going to be at?
I don't think we have set those yet. I think we're still working. Do you have those?
You just send it to the whole council. I'm sure everybody's going to want it, please. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. Yes, sir. Into the next pillar of intelligence-led policing. Back in January of 2019, about a year ago, we noticed a change in the behavior of suspects relative to particular types of crimes, where individuals that would typically have broken into a car or entered a car unlawfully to burglarize it and take items that weren't there, they would typically leave. They wouldn't steal the car. What we've seen change over the last year is one change in a suspect's behavior, where the last thing that we're seeing many suspects do before they leave is they put their foot on the brake and they push the button, and the car starts. Because we found that individuals are leaving vehicles unlocked with the prox key in the car. Half of the vehicles stolen in the city of Chattanooga last month were unlocked with the keys in them. It changed the way that our suspects were working, so we had to change the way that we worked. So what we did is we created an auto crimes unit. So we combined how we were following up on thefts from vehicles, your iPads, your sunglasses, firearms, and how we tracked down the individuals that actually stole the car itself. And we realized that we were crossing lines on who the suspects were, what their patterns of behavior and victimization were within the city. So dedicating this unit into that format, so they talked with each other about what they were following up on and what they were investigating. If you'll notice, our auto crimes, including auto theft and theft from vehicle, while they were going up both in 2017 and 18, on the advent of this unit over the course of 2019, those numbers started to drop. So we're going to continue those efforts coming into 2020, and we're hopeful that we can get that same response from the way that we've changed our investigative techniques, as well as some messaging and marketing relative to the importance of locking your car, securing your firearms, take your keys out of the car, and some other PSAs and items that we're going to work to develop and get out in our community. We can continue to drop those numbers like we saw in 2019. Our robbery unit. Last year, our robbery unit took on 220 cases worked by a total of 6 investigators. That's a tremendous workload, and as a result, from their diligence, our robbery unit posted a little over a 60% clearance rate for the year. The national average is around 30. They're an extremely successful and wonderful group of investigators. Their tenacity is unparalleled. And as a recognition of that, our local FBI office swore in those 3 investigators that you see in that photograph as federal task force officers. It streamlines the information. They have the ability to network into federal resources in the investigation. And to our knowledge, we're the first local agency in the entire United States to have 3 investigators from one agency sworn into those roles, which to me, it illustrates the importance and the value that our local federal partners saw in each one of those 3 people, as well as to solidify that partnership to bring about a 60% clearance rate, and hopeful that will climb over the next year relative to robberies and violent crimes. In 2019, our homicide rate, we did not see the success that we would want. Our homicide actually rose 65%. In 2017 to 2018, we did see the success we'd hoped for. 2019, unfortunately, we climbed back up. But we climbed up in other areas that our community has not typically seen it in years past. If you'll notice the chart below that where it talks about group member involved percentages relative to non-fatal shootings and homicides, starting around 2015, we started to see the decline of group or gang member involved crimes relative to shootings and homicides. And you'll notice in 16, 17, 18, and again in 19, we had double-digit percentage reductions in group or gang member involved shootings or homicides. The spikes that we saw relative to this slide in homicides were spread into other areas that Chattanooga has not typically seen that spike. 16% of our homicides in 2019 were domestic violence related. We had a good number of those that were related to robberies. We had one that was over an Xbox. A gentleman lost his life for an Xbox. And that's one of the reasons that we created the Safe Exchange Zone, or we get information out about safe places to handle those types of transactions. So we're working in the next year to move over into how we're going to work to address what we experienced as a community in 2019 with specific focus on domestic violence and robbery. And you're seeing what we're doing in the robbery unit as well towards the end of 2019. So we're hopeful that that will get us into the numbers that we do want to see coming into 2020 relative to our homicide rate. But with that, and you've heard me say before, one of the greatest measures that I believe we have relative to trust between this police department and the community is what does your homicide clearance rate look like? And as we've discussed before, our clearance rose from 16 to 17 to 18 with an 83% clearance rate, with the national average being around 60. 2007 and 2019, our homicide clearance rate was 72%. However, that does not include 3 cases, which we hope to have closure on very soon, which will bring our clearance rate up to 90% again, or 80%, excuse me. So that puts us back into the 80th percentile for a homicide clearance rate. That's the culmination of all the efforts that your police department, you as a council, the mayor and his efforts of bringing all that together to build trust with the community to help us solve the most tragic crimes that occur in our community. And that's done, as you see, from a victim-centered approach, specialized training of our investigators, the Real-Time Intelligence Center, leveraging intelligence and technology to help us bring stronger cases in for prosecution, and federal and state partnerships to help us with those prosecutions across the board. So our clearance rate has stayed consistent over the last 2 years, and we're hopefully see if we can get it higher. But with an 80-some-odd% clearance rate with a national average of around 60, I think we're doing pretty good. And then focused deterrence being your last pillar. Relative to our NIBIN, or our gun crimes evidence system, is we have now brought on an additional 18 agencies in our area that participate and contribute into the NIBIN system, with the understanding that NIBIN is only as good as the entries that you put into it. It only works by the number of casings and firearms evidence that you enter into the system to do the match, to give you the link to help you with the investigation. So the more agencies that are contributing into that just creates a better search product, helps us in our investigative leads. So out of those 18, we have federal, state, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama. We have over 4,000 uses total, with the major contributors being Cleveland PD, East Ridge PD, Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, and the Chattanooga Housing Authority, with everyone understanding that violent criminals don't understand jurisdictions. They don't care if it's a state line or a county line or a district line or what part of the city. So for us to bring in firearms evidence for those link analysis, the more participating agencies, the better for us. And we're starting to see that build. This is what your firearm seizures look like in 2019. For me, that...
One second,
Yes,
Chief.
sir.
Vice Chairman Henderson?
Chief, you might going back one second.
Yes, sir.
Explain the percentage. So each agency is listed.
Yes, sir.
There's a total and there's a percentage, which some of them have a total but 0%. What's the percentage refer to?
The percentage, it's not reaching a statistically significant number. It's not rising over 1%. It's not getting up to a roundup of about 1. And some of that actually needs some updating. If you'll notice, Signal Mountain is on there with 0 entries, and we just entered firearms from Signal Mountain a week or 2 ago. I'm pretty sure everybody's heard about that one. So there are some numbers in there, but that percentage is the total number or percentage of entries made by that agency into the raw number of entries into the NIBIN system as a whole. Where if you notice, we made 3,727 entries into the system, resulting in a 92% of the entries belonging to the Chattanooga Police Department. But some of those other numbers, like where you'll see 35 as a 1, 11 does not rise to a statistical significance to make it a 1.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes, sir.
And is it that just because they're not having the cases, or?
It's their elected, I'm sorry, sir. It's their elected decision as to why they enter them. We don't give them a set protocol for their agency of you shall make entries on these types of crimes or these particular circumstances. We'll leave that to the individual agency to determine the importance and necessity of entering that data in the hopes that the value of that entry is understood and we can either increase if we're not getting all of their firearms evidence, or maybe we are. In some of the smaller jurisdictions, they just simply do not have the rate of gun crime related with a seizure of evidence that we do.
Well, I'm surprised that Collegedale has more than Cleveland,
It's a matter of what they're collecting.
in that this may be the.
And to expand on that, the reason we haven't had 3,727 people shot. Let me just be very clear about what that number signifies. What that means is that's the total number of items entered into the system. But the way that we respond to a shots fired call is not typical for law enforcement in the country. That's why we're held up by ATF standards of how we collect those. For every single shots fired call that occurs inside the city that we get dispatched on, the expectation is the officers search the area. They'll get out and look with flashlights. They'll canvass the neighborhood. They'll knock on doors and ask people, did you hear shots? Where did it come from? All in an effort to do two main things. One is to find the evidence that gets entered into the system, which makes our system deeper and produces better product on our link analysis. Two, which is the trust builder, is it gets the community to understand that its police department cares about gun crimes even when no one's shot. The thought process for years of my career was the only time police cared is when somebody got hit, when there was blood on the ground, if you will, to use an overly graphic example. We need to get in front of it, and that's what we're working to do. So when the shots fired call comes out, the officers are dispatched. They look for the shell casings. If they locate any evidence, there is a set standard operating procedure of how that evidence is collected. We use maps to show where the evidence was collected from. In the event we have later calls, future calls, or something comes in that we need that intelligence to help us figure out what's going on either on that street, in that community, or that part of the city. So our efforts to bring in firearms evidence is atypical, and that's why our numbers are much higher. I could not speak to what a Collegedale is doing versus a Cleveland, but I would imagine it is the expectation of the importance of collecting firearms evidence and bringing that in relative to the shell casings.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Also focusing the folks' deterrence was the DUI arrest from our traffic and DUI unit. They were recognized this past year by the Tennessee Highway Safety Office, with especially the focus on Officer Jeff Buckner. He earned top DUI enforcer in East Tennessee by MAD. And to highlight what Officer Buckner has done, Officer Buckner in 2018 was recognized as well for making 226 DUI arrests himself. That's 226, in my opinion, lives that may have been saved. So their efforts from our DUI unit is phenomenal. And you'll notice getting into the traffic fatalities that are DUI related, we brought those down from 16 to 17, small increase, but that increase relative to the number of arrests, we're hoping that the word gets out. Uber, Lyft, whatever it takes, find another way home other than the back of one of our police cars 8 hours later by way of 601 Walnut Street. And that unit right there leads the way on trying to get that message out. And then finally, if you notice in the headlines, we had two runaway events last week, one resulting in an Amber Alert, which is this right here. It was reported on January 21st. We received information a short time later that this young lady was actually being held against her will up in Nashville. Some of the individuals seated behind me actually ran the command post that night at the Chattanooga Police Department at around 10, 11, midnight, however long it went, with our state and federal partners, as well as a link to Nashville Police Department. And as a result of their efforts, we managed to find her. We found her. To give you an idea of the manner in which we found her, searching the location where we believe she was being held by the individual that she was with up in Nashville against her will, that individual walked out in the hallways and was observed by a Nashville police officer. With that Nashville police officer was a member of your fugitive unit who was up there as well, working hand in hand with our partners. When they see behind this individual, her, and she stepped out in the hallway, and they weren't quite sure if it was her or not. Our fugitive unit, your fugitive detective, said, Lucy. And she immediately ran, jumped up, grabbed him, and he hugged her. So it was a pretty powerful story to be able to send resources, watch the dedication of this team, see those partnerships solidify, and bring a 12-year-old girl home. And that's what's being worked through right now is the rest of that investigation. But just wanted to give you a little bit more of the backstory about what your police department did by bringing that young lady back. And lastly, Thursday night, CPD Cadet Class 2019-3 will graduate from the Police Academy at Calvary Chapel with the event starting at 6 o'clock. Any questions?
Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Chairman. Chief, can you go back to your DUI slide?
Yes, sir.
So either last year or the year before, I was asking about Uber and Lyft and what kind of impact have we seen with DUIs? And it looks like, well, with DUI fatalities, we were up, but it looks like from 619, 607, is it, in your opinion, actually helping? Because like when I'm out with folks and they're maybe even making jokes about, you know, we don't have a beer or things like that, they say, well, I'm going to Uber home. It becomes part of the language now. And are you sensing that in Chattanooga that is part or becoming part of our culture with people going out? I mean, do you feel good about that? Or are these numbers always going to be kind of where we're at based on our population?
I don't believe they're going to be where we're at based on our population, no, sir. I think the proliferation of ride assist programs like Uber and Lyft can only help those numbers go down. I think many people now plan their night around, let's schedule time so the Uber can get here so we can make our reservations. It's not an afterthought. That's the goal, because if the ride is an afterthought and not a planned event, then you're relying on that afterthought to occur in the brain of an individual that has been drinking
Right.
or other things. So that's probably not the best default. If it's part of the conversation, it becomes part of the planned event. Every single time one less person who's under the influence gets behind the wheel, it absolutely makes for safer streets. I think what you see is eventually we're just going to have to get to understanding what that impact, because I know the study that you and I discussed was the number of fatalities or arrests may not be declining at the rate that we thought they would due to the increased use of ride assist programs. I think they will eventually. I just don't know that we've caught up with the flow of traffic relative to the amount of individuals drinking and driving, but I also think maybe they stand out a little bit more. Maybe we see the individuals that are under the influence, so that's why our arrests can go up, start bringing those things down, more people use it. I think it is just simply a collective effort on how we address drinking and driving.
Very good. That one was always interesting to me. Another question is, it seems like we're hearing more shootings, and we've had some things obviously happen here recently that have always get to our attention, and we care, and you know, we always hold our hearts heavy. And I'm just wondering are we going to see are we expecting an increased uptick in this kind of activity when we get into spring and summer?
There's always the expectation that with warmer weather and longer hours that humans interact with one another more. With human interaction, sometimes they go well, sometimes they don't. And I'm not trying to make a very vague or evasive response to that. Our plan is to be responsive to that, figure out how we get in front of some of those items through the focused deterrence model. I don't want to ever answer this council and say, the way we're going to get in front of violence this summer is we're going to put a police officer on every corner. Because I know nobody wants to see 600 of me walking around. But if we're in the right places and we're doing it the right way, we deliberately set up some of our response in recent meetings to increase police presence in certain areas relative to particular types of behavior and suspect behavior that we're looking to address. But that police presence is not what you would consider your typical police presence. It's not pull cars over, be visible, have your blue lights on. It's figure out an event that you can go to, step out of the car and engage with the community. It's police presence in every facet of what police presence could look like, not just the enforcement arm of what we do. And that's what a lot of our conversations coming into the first part of the year before the weather turns warmer, which apparently the weather means tomorrow or today. But that is our hope, is to just increase the police presence, either through non-conventional patrol techniques, whether that's your standard bike patrol or your golf carts or foot patrols or whatever that is, but to design our presence in conjunction and in presence with the community. So it's just, yeah, there may be more police officers, but we're not doing just what you only consider police officers doing.
Got it. I have one more question, Mr. Chair. Recently, we passed legislation that allowed your department to issue tickets or citations for using cell phones and whatnot. And how are we doing a good job at that? Because I look around and I don't think a lot of people get the message. And I'm wondering what we can do to increase those efforts, because I mean, and sometimes this week I've been in the truck all day, week, and I look around and I mean, everybody's on their phone. Everyone's talking on it. One guy was reading a paper going down 24, and I'm
Completely believe that,
and I'm like,
yes.
you've got to be kidding me. Reading the paper. I don't even know what a paper is, but he was reading it. But no, seriously, how can we, as a city, working with your department, get that word out that that's against the law?
Well, I mean, and to go back to your DUI question, we've asked for communities and citizens and all of us to understand the hazards and risks of drinking and driving, and we still took 619 people to jail. Yeah. If you walk past it and you don't say anything, then you've made it permissible. So if you're a parent and you're talking to your child on the phone, ask them, where's your phone? Are you using the sync device, or are you holding it up? If you're in your car with your friend and you're driving to lunch and their phone rings and they pick it up, depending upon how close your relationship is with that person, address it the best way you can. But until 180,000 residents of Chattanooga, 330 in the county, and however many spreads out from there, all decide to address it as an overall issue with each of us, enforcement won't bring it down. On any given day, you may have 50, 60, 70 police officers patrolling a city of 300,000 people, and they all get on the road at lunch.
Sure.
We can't get enough coverage to try and deliver a message, and we can't issue enough citations to where the punitive impact of that changes behavior. It simply has to become, I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. So every time I see it, I'm going to say something. Say it constructively, say it politely,
But say it.
but say it.
I
Get it off your chest. Yes, sir.
Roger that, Chief. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Chief.
Hello, sir.
Thanks for all the work you do. Truly commend it. I wanted to know, I keep hearing that from several constituents that they would like for this body to put something in force, something present about, and I think you had a conversation about it in the past, when that all officers should have CRT training. What is the level of responsibility that will put on the city financially for the officers, time, physically, mentally, all of those things? What do you think?
For crisis intervention training, we currently put in at least 2 classes a year for CIT. At this point, out of 460 some odd officers in the sworn ranks graduated, you're probably around 130 that have already attended that. Then couple in that the 20 some odd that are trained hostage negotiators, you have a good sized representation within the department. If I could have every single officer in the police department go through the CIT training, I'd do it tomorrow. It's not really a cost factor. It's getting enough of the classes scheduled and then enough people to where the schedule will allow their participation, because you are pulling them out of their primary role for that amount of training.
Gotcha.
But we're fully in favor in trying to get as many individuals into CIT training as we can. If you'll indulge me, let me follow up with that entity, find out what their schedule block is, and
Yes,
if we
sir.
have enough interest, not only from us, but from all the other partnering agencies that attend that training, to maybe bring in additional classes, we'll work to host those and offset any costs that may be generated from that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Chief. The work you and your men doing, thank y'all.
All right.
And that concludes it.
Thank you, Council.
Sure. If there's no other business, we are adjourned till 6 o'clock.
too easy.